Today is the 19th of September 1990. I'm interviewing Mrs. Nana Reid, Rosebank, Port Logan. Nana, would you care to tell me your date of birth, please, and where you were born?
I was born at Clash, Port Logan, on the 23rd of December 1911.
And have you lived in Port Logan all your life, therefore?
Yes, I have.
And what is your earliest recollections?
Well, I can remember when I was quite small, when my mother used to be able to have to do things for us, you know, when we couldn't do them for ourselves. And I can remember going to school when I was, I presume when I was just 5.
Would this be Port Logan School?
Yes, it was Port Logan School.
And how many were in the school at that time?
Well, I couldn't tell you that, but there were there were 3 teachers in the school when I went first. One in the infant classes, one in the middle classes, and then the headmaster.
And that they would be children up to the age of
14.
From
Yes.
5 to 14.
Yes.
And how many were in your particular family? How many?
3.
3?
My sister, my brother, and myself.
And they would all be at Port Logan School at one time?
Yes, but my sister wasn't at school same time as me. She only started school when I left it.
And when you left school, did you leave Port Logan School? You didn't go to any
No,
other?
I wasn't at any other school.
No. And what did you do when you first left school then?
Just helped at home.
On the farm? Doing what in particular?
Anything and everything that had to be done.
What kind of a farm was it?
Well, just ordinary dairy farm.
And did you have to do special duties, or did you just...
No, not any special.
Nothing
Had to
special?
help with everything that was being done.
And how many people worked on the farm, apart from your parents?
My father and one boy that helped. He always employed one boy and ourselves, you know.
Milking?
Yes, I had to milk. Oh, before I left school, we had to help with the milking because it was all hand milking then.
How many heads of cattle would you be?
We just had 20 cows then.
All milking?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
apart from
Yes, milking cows.
hens?
Yes, we had hens and ducks and turkeys and all sorts of that. We had to feed all those. And we had pigs as well.
You don't see many pigs now around Port Logan.
And I can remember when our house was struck with lightning, and we had pigs then. And that was when I was just very young at school, because Jimmy wasn't at, my brother wasn't at school then.
And what happened?
And we had to be taken down because they didn't know that it was lightning was the reason for it, you see. They thought it was something to do with submarines or something in the bay, because it was First World War. And we had to get all the lights. The lights went out, funnily enough, and they weren't electric. They were just ordinary lamps. And when this happened, the lights all went out. The lamps all went out. There must have been some substance or something went through the house that did that. And they were frightened, my mother and father were frightened to light the lamps again. It's maybe just as well they didn't, because I think there could have been an explosion. But the house was very badly damaged. The kitchen was all, the linoleum was all torn up through the house, from the back kitchen window. Didn't have that much glass left in it. And it smashed all the range, the kitchen range, and tore the linoleum. And my father had a very narrow escape. because he was sitting on a chair like here, and he rose to go to the table for something, and the lightning went under. It must have been under the chair where he'd been sitting.
And were any of the animals, were they?
No, nothing was
no.
hurt outside.
No.
But when we discovered, when we went to, my mother took us outside instead of lighting the lamps in the house, and the pigs got out. The pigs were out in the yard running around. Whether the fright had done anything to, they broke out and they were all running around the yard. But there was glass everywhere, and there was a lot of damage done.
And what time of year would that be?
October.
October.
And it was like this sort of weather.
That's
It was very
wild and stormy.
very wild, and it was terrific hail showers. You know, and it must have been a tail end of a bolt of lightning, or a part or something like that.
Can you tell me a bit about Port Logan village itself in those days when you were?
Well, there wasn't. It's not very different, except that there were no council houses then. But there were 3 shops.
Would you like to tell me about those, Maximus?
Well, there was a shop where the Lodge Hotel is, and there was a shop where Ellen Galloway lived latterly, where James McQueen's house is, and there was a shop in this house.
And what kinds of shops can you tell me
They were
about?
just, well, ordinary. They sold, well, the one in the lodge sold everything. And then what Miss McGaw was the lady who had the one in the middle of the village. And she had a general grocer's shop as well. And then this one, I can't remember much about what they sold apart from when I was a wee girl. Just when I went visiting all these shops and got chocolate without paying for it. And then I went on to the farm at Madaji and walked on, visited when I was, but not much older than Cheryl.
And who owned the shops in this house?
Well, it was Mrs. Fordyce, the
Fordyce.
Coney lady, had this one, and then it was Miss McGaw and Pollock's. Well, Pollock was the name of the people that had the one up at the top.
And was there a post office at this time?
Oh yes, the post office was here.
In
where,
this house?
Where David Dawson, no, where David
Next
Dawson
door.
is. And that was the post office.
So yeah, 3 shops and a post office.
Yes.
And was the inn in operation?
Yes.
As a public
Because I can
house?
remember getting lemonade at them when I was quite small.
But the population of the village would be far more. Although
Yes,
there
I
weren't
think
the council
so. Oh
house.
yes, it must have been, because there were families with quite a few people in them, you know, living in the most of the houses then. And there were people in all those houses. Now, you know where Mrs. Daly's house is? Well, there were 2 houses there. Where Sandy Richardson's house is, next to the lodge there. There were 2 people lived in that house, one upstairs and one downstairs. There were 2 tenants in this one, in Bridge House, one upstairs and one downstairs. And
Most of the houses would be owned by Logan Estate then, would
oh
they?
yes, they were all owned, except, well, I think the Pollock's shop, it would be owned by the McBrides even then. They owned it, although Pollock's had it rented.
And
as
who
a
were the
shop.
McBrides?
Well, the McBrides were, now I don't know where they were. They lived in it originally. And I had an aunt that was related to them.
It's not a name that's familiar to me around here.
No, well, it was they still owned it till I bought it, till we bought it, you see. But the Archie McBride was the gardener at Logan at one time. Not then though, not then. Finlay were the gardeners, was the gardener then. But Archie McBride lived up here in the house that Jimmy and Jean lives in. When I remember, and his mother lived there. But he was married and he was widowed, I think, by that time. And he lived up there. And then, but the McBrides owned that building. And I think the cautious were the people that had this house here, and that was the blacksmith. They were the blacksmiths.
Next to you,
yes,
you're talking
the
about.
bridge house.
Bridge house
and
was
two brothers, you see, and they were the blacksmiths. And that was the house that's now Thompson's house up there.
Was there a smithy on the premises?
That was the smithy, where the Thompson's house is now. That house was only made the same time as I came into this one. Geordie Brunton was the blacksmith, you see, long after that, and he was till he retired, and then he's big. It's maybe for you.
Can you tell me about the lifeboat station in Port Logan here, Nana? What you can remember about
Well,
it?
I can remember the lifeboat being launched by hand. They had to have volunteers to launch the lifeboat, and there were the crew helped, of course, as well.
Would the crew live in Port Logan?
Most of them, yes. They mostly all lived in the area. Well, there was some lived at Columfa Farm, or some of the surrounding farms came from, but not far away, because if they had to be called out.
How would they be notified of a call out in those days?
Oh, they were,
How would word get round?
I think the fire had gone. I think there was a maroon went off. Or something, because I remember it going off once when we were been at the rural, and we walked up the road with my home girls like Nina and Mary, and we were halfway up the way when the lifeboat maroon went off.
Can you remember any of the people who were on the crew then? Can you give me?
Oh, well, there was a lot of the local fishermen, like Aaron Galloway's father was the coxswain, James Galloway, and then there was John McClumpha and Tommy McConnell. It used to be at Maldagie, he was in the crew. But that graduated on till there was a lot of younger ones, but then they stopped it then because they were too young. They were not. That's why the lifeboat went away, because they couldn't get a crew over 18, and they wouldn't allow them to be on the crew, because it was after there was a bad disaster in the south of England, the Reid disaster, and there was all the lifeboat men were lost in that disaster, and after that they were not allowed to have a crew under, I think it was under 21, and they couldn't get them. Over 21, they had to be over 21, and they couldn't. It was all young ones that had gone on to the crew, and they couldn't get enough. Jimmy Stewart was on it latterly, but they just stopped. He just was on it, even they were just stopped.
So when they had to launch it by hand, they would need every man available.
You see, there was an opening at the bottom of the hall as well as at the top. It was the same. The big doors ran.
Yes, you
on
can
runners.
see clearly where the lintel goes across.
Ran and runners, you see, across, and then there was a slope. That's how the hall floors got about this depth at the bottom. You see, there's springs at the bottom because it had to be levelled up. And then after, you see, when they launched by hand for a long time, and then they got a tractor, and it was Douglas Laird, who lived at then in those days. He drove the tractor, and they used to drive the tractor into the sea, just the same as John got into his boat, and launched the boat that way, and the same when it went anywhere else.
And if it was to go into Luce Bay, I understand they used to drag it over.
Six horses took it on a trailer.
Over the Myrick Road, was that?
Well, they went on the Myrick Road, but they got to be at one of the bits above the, I think latterly they had to take it round by the toll, because one of the bridges over the burn wasn't very safe, and it was so heavy, you see, going over the bridge, that I think it was, there's a big burn runs round, and there's two bridges, one at both ends of that big wood, and it was one of those. It was two, really something. I think they took them. I think they had to go round by the toll, if I can remember. Maybe can't remember that bit right, but I knew there was something about this bridge.
And where did the horses come from? Would they be
Columfa
horses?
6 horses from Columfa.
I wonder how long it took to get it from Port Logan to Luce Bay.
I couldn't tell you that, but I remember them doing it.
So when did the lifeboat go away from Port Logan?
1928.
1928. And was the hall made?
Well then, you see, there was a hall committee before that. There were 6 ladies started the hall committee. My mother and Mrs. Hutton and Miss McConnell and Miss Galloway and Mrs. Kosh and Mrs. Party. Mrs. Party was, her husband was, they kept the library here, you know, where the Richies lived.
A library?
That was where
haven't heard about the library.
Oh yes, we had a library. And it was Carnegie, funded by Carnegie's books. And Mr. and Mrs. Party were the keepers. Well, they looked after the library.
And it was in their house?
Yes, the library was. In this part of it, which Nancy Ritchie's sitting room now. And then there was a place at the back where the men played dominoes and summer ice they used to have in there, when I can remember right back. Summer ice. How that it was done, I don't know. I never saw it done, but that's what the men played. Some sort of thing. It'd be like must have had some sort of stuff on the floor to make the things. It would be like curling, wouldn't it?
It would be, I suppose, yeah. I've not heard about that.
I knew that was summer ice. I always remember them talking about playing summer ice. But how they did it, I don't know. Because I never saw it done.
So the ladies of the whole committee?
Well, they started raising a fund, you see, to build a hall. And of course, in the 1920s, money was very scarce and it was a long, dreary job. They weren't getting very far. And then when Lifeboat went, the Laird donated the building. And all that had to be done was to convert it and build the kitchen and cloakrooms on.
The Laird at this time was?
Sir Kenneth MacDougall.
Kenneth. And the hall has been kept up by the community ever since, I presume?
Well, it's just been a committee, you see, of one, you know, from one person to another on the committee. There's always been about, well, I've been on it, I think, since my mother was on it while she was able, you know, and the original committee ran this hall to start with. But then they just got to be one went off and another went off. And then some of us younger people went on then. And
as you say, the floor is on springs at the back. I didn't realise.
No, it's springs. It's just raised up because, you see, it's level at the top door. But then when there was a slope, and you see they had to level the floor. So I suppose there'll be joists or something put underneath it. It was Ian Hutton and the Moffats, you know Nanny Moffat, well, her father-in-law, and Hugh Adair, I think, that were the contractors for the whole thing.
And what was the loft used for then?
That was a committee room when the lifeboat was there. And that big table, you know the big heavy table, well, that was up there. That was the committee table. That table that's still in the hall there. And they used that for a committee room up above. And all those things that are on it was used for things belonging to the boat. And I think some of the horses' things were kept hanging up on these things in the hall.
I wonder if any of them are still around then, the horses. You mean the harnesses and things for the horses?
Well, Columba changed hands, you see.
Maybe lying somewhere.
It was when Mr. Love was in Columba, and he was on the committee. The photograph that I have, I think, has got committee members on it. All committee members that were there. But I had to get that photograph.
At this point, Nana produced a photograph of the Port Logan lifeboat with several members of crew and committee in front of it. Perhaps you could name as many people as you could on that photograph, Nana, for me, please.
Well, that's John Hutton, that's Ian Hutton's father. I've just remembered about him.
John's still in Port Logan, of course.
Well, John's grandfather, though.
Oh, grandfather John.
And that's the coxswain of the lifeboat, that's James Galloway. And that's Matthew McClumpha. And Mr. Laird, who was schoolmaster, he was on committee, and that's Mr. Lubbock-Calumfa, Garden Love. And who else did I say in here? I should know that one. Tommy McConnell. And Adam Galloway, the Ellen's brother. Where else?
Mr. Patty, was it?
Oh, it's aye, Alexander Patty, that's right. And Archie McBride.
There's several other people here, but obviously it's difficult to remember everybody.
Who they are, no.
No, that's a most interesting photograph, Nana. You think that would be round about what date?
Well, no, after the First World War. There's no date on it, I don't think.
Not that you can see.
That was it. That one was up at Kirkmaiden, you see, in the artefacts at the Floral Festival. That's who.
Oh, the 350th anniversary.
That's
yes,
right.
yes, most interesting.
You know, the faces are all should know, but you see, I didn't know them as young. Well, I knew them then, but not really.
No. Perhaps you could tell us some of the other social activities that took place in Port Logan at that time. I think you did mention briefly the rural.
The rural started in 1922.
So where did you meet in those days?
At the school, in the school. And Mrs. Love of Calumfa was the president. Mrs. McComb Garrett, who was the vice president, no, the treasurer, she was. Mrs. Laird, Mrs. Douglas Laird, was the secretary. But I think she would be Janie Galloway then. No, her name, she wouldn't be married then. She was the first secretary.
How many members do you think?
I think there would be. I can't remember. It's not a pity we lost the minutes. And you know. Just can't think. I wasn't a member then.
No.
It was 2 years old before I became a member.
Was there a lower age limit at that time for being a member?
14.
You had to be 14.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that still applies, does it?
Must have been.
Or has it?
I must have been 1925 when I joined, because that's when I would be 14.
And you've been a member ever since, Hannah?
Yes.
That must be a record.
I've been a member ever since.
Of Port Logan?
60. What was the years remember when Mary said that at the young part?
Yes. What kind of activities did you do with the rural?
Well, it was absolutely straightforward, just rural meetings in those days. You had an opening song, minutes, business, demonstration.
By one of your members or somebody invited?
Or it could be somebody coming in, but not often. It was often just somebody round about. And then you had tea and an entertainment, and that was your programme. That was basic programme then.
Can you remember any specific night that particularly stands out in your memory? Particular demonstration or speaker or entertainment even?
There's something I remember not very long ago, but somebody demonstrated something and it was in the school. Well, I remember being shown how to fillet herrings and how to make polish with beeswax and things. That's another thing. Anymore at the moment.
Maybe come back to you. And the entertainment, that would be just the members there gathered?
Quite often, yes. It was just and it was Sing Sarah Penny P was a great thing you did quite often at the meeting, you know.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, everybody either had to do something or pay a penny. Sing, sung something or said something, or you paid a penny.
That's how you kept the funds up?
Well, we didn't. Well, the joining fees weren't much then. I think there'd be about 2 and 6 to join. I just can't remember, but I don't think wasn't very much anyway. And then, of course, we didn't have the levies then that we have now to pay. We had a levy, I suppose, but nothing much.
And was it always the first Thursday of the month? Has this followed on the tradition?
No, it was the Thursday nearest the full moon, because you didn't have lights then in those days or cars to come in. You had most of the members walked. See, and we had the meetings when it was the full moon.
So you've seen a few changes in Port Logan rural over the years, but at least it's still going.
Oh yes.
It's remarkable. And did the school host other activities?
Yes, dances and concerts and anything that was entertainment. You had to be always on a Friday night, of course, because the school was off, you see, to the weekend. And then in those days there was a cleaner in the school, you see, that cleaned it up. But we always had to tidy up afterwards.
And which committee would put on, say, a concert for the village? Who would organise it?
Just anybody that could.
Anybody?
Anybody that could.
And I understand there were quite a few local artists anyway, weren't there?
Well, there were quite a few people that could do things, and I mean, some of them were very good at doing sketches and plays and things like that. We had quite a few members that could do that in those days. You know, there were.
And quite a few local musicians.
Oh yes, because Mrs. McGuffock, who was Lily McConnell then, and
she played.
William McGuffock, who became her husband, and then there was the butcher Gough from Drumore, and Ben, his sister, and Bob Scott, who was the postman in Drumore. That was consisted of the band. That was the band, and it was quite a good band.
What instruments did they play?
They played violin and a piano, 2 violins, and piano, and what did Bob Scott play? Did he play drums? He played drums, I think. Can't remember quite a bit what he played.
But obviously quite a popular band.
And Gough played a guitar or something like that. No, they don't think they had. No, they didn't have an accordion. Benton played the piano, and William played the violins.
And everybody joined in the dancing, presumably?
Oh yes, and we all went to dances, you see, when the band was going. But we were allowed to go then if the band was going, see, to Drumore or to Arble or wherever, or Sandhead maybe, or somewhere else. Right. That was the extent that you got.
And were you married at this time, Nana?
No, I was married in. No, I wasn't married till 1940.
And your husband was?
He went to the army that year. You see, he was ready to go to. He was due to.
Just married.
He was cheese making then, but he wasn't exempt from the army.
So your husband Sam, am I right in saying, was working at the creamery in Stranraer?
He was in the Stranraer creamery, and he was also in Sandhead creamery
as a cheesemaker. And that would be quite a different process than it is nowadays, I suppose.
And I don't know, I expect they'll be all done a lot more machinery now and sort of thing. I don't know what they do now. I knew what they did then.
Yes, can you tell me a bit about what he actually did, what his specific job was?
Well, they had to put the milk in and get it, the rennet or whatever it was, into the, what they call steeped it, you know, put the rennet into the milk to start the cheese, and then it, I don't know how long it took though before it was ready, and then they, what did they do after that? They put the curd through the mill, you know, to make into the cheese after it was ready for, you know, it was formed into cheese. I didn't know the full process, but I had an idea that's what they did.
How many people would work at Sandhead Creamery at that time?
Well, Walter McLean was the manager, and Sam was the cheesemaker with him. And then there was girls, there was 2 or 3 girls worked, and there was other 3 or 4 men. I can't remember how many. At the beginning of 41, he went to the army, and I stayed still at the Clash. Well, we stayed in Stranraer for a bit after we were married because he was working in Stranraer in the creamery. But then he moved back to Sandhead, you see, when the summer milk or whatever, they needed more milk in at Sandhead. And I came back home then and stayed, and because he was called up for the army anyway, knew he was going. So then it was just when he came back when he came out of the army in November 45, we moved into we got the house, the lodge, because there was people in it all during the war, you see. A gunnery instructor at West Fruit, and he went away, and the house was empty, but we just had it rented, because it still belonged to the McBrides, you see. And he was in Australia, the man that owned it, and it wasn't until he came back from Australia we could buy it.
So you had it as a guest house and tea room? And did you have people working for you then?
Oh yes.
At that time?
I had quite a lot of girls around. I had, oh dear, different lots of girls, because all that time sometimes they would be there for 2 years or more, and then they would have to go away to, you know, get older and go away somewhere else. Irene Murdoch and Sheila Cook worked for 2 or 3 years, and June Blackwell and Irene Murdoch worked together. And they then, when they got older, you see, Irene went away to college, and June went to work in Stranraer. It was when they were at school. See, while they were at high school, they did that for me in the summer months.
And how many bedrooms did you have for renting out?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Would that be mostly like holiday visitors?
Oh, it was all holidays.
All holidays.
It was just from about, it wasn't as long a season then as it is now. It was maybe from about June, July and August, that was the most of it.
But the tea room was there
just the
as
same
well?
time, it was just in
You
the
just
summer.
had the tea room?
I didn't have it at the beginning, but then I got on to that because people came asking if they could get cups of tea, you know, and there's no tea room. So that's why I made the shop part into a tea room. What's the bar now? In there.
Now, you said there was a Sunday school. Was that in Port Logan, Nana?
First of all, it was in the school over there, and I started the Sunday school. And then it went to St Agnes, down to the Weekend.
Oh, that would be still used on a regular basis for services, was it?
Yes. There was a service every Sunday then.
And that was
every Sunday night.
Yes.
But we went to Sunday school during the day at St Agnes.
Ah.
And it was Mrs. McLean, Reid Balgowan, who taught me in the Sunday school at St Agnes. And
Were you in the habit of going to services at St Agnes at this time?
We used to go at night, yes.
And who was the minister?
Well, whichever was the parish minister who came to St Agnes to preach on the Sunday night. It would be Mr Williamson. He was the sort of retired minister then, and then it was Mr. McMorland would be the minister in the parish church, and Mr Muir, I think, at that time in the Free Kirk, but I can't remember if it was always them, or whether it was the Ardwell minister might have come too. You see, I just can't remember exactly who it was that did the preaching, but I remember we going to and I can remember always going to Harvest Thanksgiving, and it was such a lovely smell of apples and things in the wee church when you went in to Harvest Thanksgiving. It was lovely.
Would there be somebody living in the manse?
Oh yes, not anybody connected with, there was no minister.
No.
Oh yes, Mr Guttridge must have been in the manse at first when I was a child. That's right. Mr Guttridge lived in the manse then. He was there. And he was the minister. Because his daughter-in-law was my mother's cousin. She lived, Auntie Jean Guttridge, till not many years ago. She was a daughter-in-law of Mr Guttridge, who was the minister there.
How many years ago did they stop using St Agnes Church?
That was the front door busting open. Maybe I put this at the back of it.
A bit over 20.
St Agnes.
Your sister Sally was married in St Agnes Church.
Right. And quite a few people. That was after the church was closed as a church, though it wasn't used as a church then. But one or two people were married later in it.
Afterwards, yes. Seems a pity now that
it's
quite
a pity it's gone.
A ruin, isn't it?
Such a lovely wee church.
Yes. And that was really the church of the
that
estate.
Was Logan, the chapel for Logan. You see, it was their church. Oh, and Mr Andrews went and preached in it for St Ninian, you know, after he came.
Yes.
But I think there was a sort of, I don't know what happened, but just stopped, the services stopped.
Probably not enough people, I
We used to have our service every now and then, St Ninian, you see.
And you remember, of course, the regular services in Port Logan Hall.
Oh yes, we had a service once a month in Port Logan Hall with our own parish minister.
And that would be pretty well attended, I would think, in those days.
Well, at first it was, but not latterly. There weren't many went latterly,
No.
just a few people from around.
Now, you said your mother was a member of what was then the Mothers' Union.
Yes, when I was a child, but I don't remember much about it. I just remember her going to the Mothers' Union, as she called it, and I remember this fete at Logan once when Mrs McDougall she would be the president, I think. That was the Laird's mothers, and Kenneth McDougall and Douglas McDougall's mother.
So Agnes was that?
Was it Agnes McDougall, I think?
I think it was Agnes
right.
McDougall.
She was Agnes Buchan Hepburn, of course.
Yes,
Buchan
Agnes
Hepburn.
Buchan Hepburn, yes. And you never was a member of the Mothers' Union then?
No, it wasn't any Mothers' Union. And then, I don't know when it started actually as a women's guild, because my mother wasn't in it. You know, latterly, after when she was older, she wasn't in the guild. It wasn't until we started going from here, you see that.
And that would be to Dromore?
Yeah, the used to be, the minister's wife or mother or whoever was there used to be the president, but Mrs Scott, the Block Scott's mother, she was the president of the guild for quite a few years. I can remember that.
You don't know when it started in Dromore?
No, not really, but there'll be plenty, there'll be records of that.
Yes,
in the church records.
Yes.
Various folk for the character in these places, and the cooks for the cow, and they were at the school along with, and some of the Reid sin a name fi Columba was the skill along this.
Any particular memories you would like to tell us about, Hughie?
Well,
You can remember the lifeboat.
yeah, I remember.
Oh yes, that would be interesting.
I remember the life. In fact, on one occasion, and funny, the man that this day they're short a man, they pull the boat out. It was pulled out with manpower in the days, but latterly they got a tractor. Dougie Laird got the tractor. So I mean a hill Reid, a half brother of Jim's along here. The head man James Gullow says, get 4 boys and we'll give them the price of lunch, which was 12 shilling. That was 3 shilling a piece. We got. And Hill Reid, he was the head and he got the thing they put in his arm. And of course when we went to let our money, he went along with us and he lifted the money and given it to me. And there's one of the cook boys, and I can't mind the third one, but I can mind that Hill had the, I can mind that particularly.
And this was to launch the lifeboat?
Launch the lifeboat, and you had to pull the thing a bit back up. When the boat came in, you had to pull her up on rollers, and you pull her right up onto the thingy.
To hook her up, to put her on the hooks.
Put her on the thingy, and she sat on this carriage and wheels, and you just open the door and they pull the blocks out, and she run down into the water. And when she run down into the water, they released something, and she shot into the water. And of course, everybody jumped in her and away.
Were you actually a member of the lifeboat crew?
No, it was only just because we were doing this day at the skill, and James Gullow says, get 4 of these boys, and you know, put an arm and on the lifeboat in the institute, and he collected the money and paid us. So that's the only kind of outstanding event that ever happened.
I was told that they used to drag the lifeboat over to New England Bay. Can you tell
yes,
me?
I remember that very well. I wasn't very old. Not long after my mother died in 1917, Hughie Wallace, the grieve at Achabrick, the boss, come down about 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, are you waking, Joan? He says, what is it? He says, the Columba men are all off with the flu, and somebody will take their horses to pull the lifeboat round to New England Bay. My father took the horses for Columba and went in some of the other men to Achabrick and pulled the boat racks round in New England. And when they were round, this boat, it hadn't been wrecked at all. It hadn't been any difficult. They had just drew in and they kind of run the sun, and they had to wait for the tide come back. It left it. You can
just run aground.
Just kind of run aground. So that's how they kind of.
But was that quite a regular occurrence to take?
Well, it wasn't it? But they used to have practices, went out for practice.
Yes.
Motion. But a lot of times they went on. During the First World War, I mean, 2 or 3 torpedoes and wrecks from here, 2 in particular. Aye.
It would have taken quite a long time to get the horses organised.
Yes, all that had to be done. Aye, all that had to be done. And then Dougie Laird, they got this tractor after we left here. They got this tractor, and Dougie Laird, he operated it, and they didn't need anybody.
They wouldn't need the manpower.
Just the kind of crew to see it.
When did the lifeboat cease to operate?
She went into operation here in 1930 when the David died. 1932, 33, 33, I think, 32. Aye, 32, she knew to here in 32. I mean, they sold off everything. There's somebody before Patrick bought the whole lifeboat for a pleasure.
Really?
Aye, and then they can't put what happened in the carriage, but they bought the whole boat, took her to Patrick, and someone had her for a kind of taking boat out. Aye, I can mind that. But that was a good while after we left here.
Would there be anybody in Port Logan who remembers being part of the lifeboat crew? Would there be anybody?
Well, no, but
the lifeboat crew's all gone.
All gone. John Hutton's father there, he was one of the crew. That's one buddy I can mind was one of the crew. And Tommy McConnell from Mildadgy and Uncle Lillis used to live are all. They're all gone. They're all gone. So I don't think really apart from that there's anything really exciting. So.
Now this is Miss Nellie's service. Good afternoon, Nellie. Would you like to tell me about your experiences at Logan House particularly? But
yes,
you can start wherever you like.
I went as a maid and was there for a few years till my mother died. And then I had to come home and take her place. And in these days, there was a lady's maid, there was
2 housemaids, cook, there was a good big staff, and there was the chauffeur, Dunlop's cottage and present Dromore. His father was the chauffeur when I was there, and I walk it over to Logan Mains every night for the milk, and we had to attend St Agnes's Church every Sunday, and we daren't go down before the lady, Mrs McDougall of Logan. We had to wait till they were in the church first. And I remember well the day I told the laird that Miss McDougall was married in Logan House. They brought up the mead like an altar and had it flowers just like the church. Oh, it was beautiful.
The altar was where?
From St Agnes's, you know the wee church?
Yes,
In the house.
She was married in the house?
She was married in the house.
I see.
And we were to come stand in our uniform at a certain distance, the staff, to see her coming down the front stair. And she was beautiful. Pale grey with a pink line, and her train was lined with pink satin. She was beautiful. And it was a lovely service. We witnessed that.
And did she have bridesmaids as we would have?
The name that the laird called is Hepburn, Hepburns, 2 of them, of Lady McDougall's side. It was very, very nice, very nice. And the man that used to look after the Highland cattle over here at Achabrick was a Highland man. Lachlan MacPhail was his name, and he was a great piper. And he was there that day piping when they went away on their honeymoon.
Would there be a lot of guests?
That was her first husband, but he died, and he's buried up in the vault here in Kirkmaiden churchyard. Hughie.
Yeah, that's right.
So, were there a lot of guests at the wedding?
Yes, but the reception was, they just went away. It wasn't here, it was away further afield, the reception. We never, it wasn't at Logan, the reception.
You didn't do the catering for the big day?
No. But she was really, and she was a very nice lady, Miss McDougall Logan, very nice. And the old gentleman, Mr. Douglas, was a great foreign, travelled a lot. And Logan House in these days was full of bear skins and all the different animal skins and corns. And gracious, the front hall was terrible that he brought away from Africa and these foreign places.
Because he was one of the men responsible for the creation of the garden, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right.
And Kenneth, was
Mr. Kenneth McDougall, he was the laird. He was very nice.
Being the older brother, is that
yes.
right? Mm-hmm.
And Achabrick there was the home farm then. And my brother that died away in Canada was just a schoolboy. He used to go over to the big house with the eggs and stuff for the home farm, to the big house, to Logan. And
can you remember how much you were paid as a kitchen?
Very little. Very little. I really couldn't remember. I kind of was every month we got, but it wasn't a big sum, I'm telling you.
Did you start early in the morning?
Started at about 7:30 in the morning, but then latterly, years after that, when I worked in Dunsky House with the present Mrs. O'Ewan, she's an old lady too. I started there, went up Fletney when I've got bad heart trouble now. Stairs, no end of stairs I was running up and down. She got her morning cup of tea at 7:30. That was my first trot up to her and away along the long corridor to someone when there's visitors there. I seen me working for 10 in the dining room. I went in the butler's place into Dunsky. Do you know Dunsky?
Yes, that's what Patrick, yes.
Mm-hmm. And I had an awful lot to do these days.
Was that after Logan?
Yes, after Logan. But, that was years ago after my mother died. I got a house at Dunsky and I worked there. But, I don't know.
Can you describe some of the food you would prepare? And
yes, it was a good plain, not like what it is nowadays, stews and roast beef and all, and venison we used to get to. But quite good food we got in Logan. In Dunsky, I mean to say.
I would prefer really to talk about Logan if you don't mind. Would you get vegetables from the kitchen garden?
Oh yes, vegetables of all kind. There was a kitchen garden. Do you know across where the 3 houses is? as you go into Logan Mains.
Along is the kitchen garden.
Opposite it was the Logan kitchen garden,
Yes.
and all kinds of vegetables, fruit bushes galore, gooseberries and blackcurrants and everything was there. And they used an awful lot of grouse and pheasants and
Yes.
birds. Many a grouse are plucked and
And would you have the gardener brought the fresh produce into the house?
yes, the chops that was gardeners then. You can't have the boat. That was what they called the
Aye,
boathies.
for the
You see, Mrs. McGuffin that died, her husband, his brothers, Johnny and Robert McGuffey was the young gardeners, and you can't have Mrs. McCree's old house ruins is down the road past
Kelly.
Kelly,
Kelly.
Yes.
Bryce,
the Bryces, two of the Bryces.
two of the Bryce sons was working in the garden
South
too.
and north.
And there was a lady walk it every day from Port Logan for the low road, Mrs. Johnston, to clean the boats and look after the boys away from Port Logan every day. They stayed, but she went to clean their rooms and all.
So how many gardeners would there be, do you
Well, there
think?
was the two McGuffers and the 12 Bryces, and Archie McBride was the head
McBride.
gardener. He used to leave up here.
And Mr. Finlay was the
And Mr. Finlay was the head
head
gardener.
gardener.
That's right.
And
But
then
that was 5.
Then Archie McBride took it on after.
That's right. But
And how many in the kitchen? Can you remember how
there
many?
was the cook and the kitchen maid and scullery maid, a lady's maid. There was a lady's maid there, 2 housemaids, and a butler. There was a butler and a
Really?
footman. I'm forgetting that.
Oh my.
There was a butler and a footman.
Did you have a lot of guests to stay?
Yes, they had friends.
Regularly?
A lot. Quite a lot.
And would you have to prepare special meals on those occasions, or was it much the same?
No, they were very easily done when very plain. The huge dining room, it sat about a dozen and a half. A great oval table and chairs to march around. There was a beautiful, the furniture was lovely in it. See I think the Old House was the nicest of the two.
The best
It was
appearance.
lovely, the Old House. There was a business room and the Laird's business room.
When you say the old house, do you mean
The old Logan house
Old
before
Logan.
the Sarminian thing was addition.
before we altered it?
Yes.
But it's still the original house,
It
but
was-
there was
it
some
was-
taken off it, wasn't there?
You see, but
That's right.
still in the back way it's still the same.
Aye.
With the entrance is still the same. I
At
think,
the back?
And there was a laundry.
Hmm.
There was a great big laundry to the back.
So there would be staff in the laundry too?
I wonder if that's still there, is it?
I think the laundry could now be the cellars.
Oh, like
was it down below?
Oh, the cellars in Dunsky was down below the house, but I can't mind right about the
Was the laundry down below, can you remember? At Logan?
No, you took the back door, the laundry's just across, and I can't mind about the cellars. But I mind at Dunsky the cellar was down below the house, way down below.
Can we just stop there a minute? Okay. Can you tell us about any other big events that took place?
I tell
at
you what I remember to at Logan, the pink flamingos on the dam, you can mind it, and the golden pheasants. You never see such a thing, do
The golden pheasant.
but they were beautiful.
No, they're more a rare breed now.
Aye, they were beautiful.
Flamingos, that's interesting because there was
The
recently...
long-legged-
Yeah, you see that in the paper, there's 12 on it in this country.
So I suppose.
I seen that in the website.
Do you remember anything about Logan curling? Curling at
Yes, the pond.
Mhm.
I've seen that pond frozen stiff in the month of April. They were curling on it.
Beginning of April.
Yes, the beginning of April. They were curling on Logan Pond.
So obviously,
Yes,
regularly
the lake.
in the winter time, it would be frozen for long periods.
Oh
of time,
yes, it was that. It was that.
which doesn't happen now.
No,
so
no,
Do you
no.
think the climate was colder in those days?
Well, we got a lot of frost.
I doubt it would be.
I think they were more severe the winters then.
I doubt it.
You could have done another pint if you could get John coming back doing, because Ian's coming the morning Saturday.
Don't broke the pint today.
Oh, aye.
Another pint, John, please.
Go out and get it, Hughie. I see there's two big new houses in the bottom row. It's Richardson's.
Aye.
And then that flat roofed house, it's a butcher for Glasgow owns it. That's new. It was just plain simple row that's still the same, isn't it? But look, in these days, you see what's the lodge new, Janice? Well, that was a shop. Mrs. McBride, she was an Irish lady.
Oh no, it was at the Ryan the show.
Aye, Mrs. McBride.
Aye, but you're saying at this end.
No,
Oh,
at the lodge. What the lodge is?
Oh,
Yeah.
why, that's right, the lodge.
There was 1, 2, 3 shops.
That's right.
Farther along down the street, Miss McGaw.
Aye.
She was a dressmaker.
No.
No, the Miss
God had the show, but then,
Miss Goldie's was
to begin with.
and then further along where Nana's
Miss
who
Galloway
says
had.
was
No,
Mrs. Fordyce.
That's
Mrs.
right.
Fordyce. Those 3 shops.
That's right.
Right, let's start again about the shops. We've got a bit confused here. The lodge
It
was
was Mrs. McBride.
Mrs. McBride.
And her son they were both captains, and one was drowned, do you mind? And Nan over here, Mrs. Mackay's father, on the same boat. They were both drowned. They
In
went to-
Port Logan?
No,
No.
they went to Stranraer to bring a boat round to Port Logan,
that's right.
and it was a stormy day, and they would take no advice. They were drowned.
That's right.
And she had a parrot, oh dear, it hopped along the counter when you went into the shop, and you had to, and she was awful annoyed if you didn't pay heed to it and talk to Polly the parrot. And she had a hen with feathery legs, oh you
I'm in it fine.
Horace, she called it. It was in the shop where tea.
What kind of shop was it?
Oh, she had everything.
Oh, I should
I had a jar, a great big glass jar there, Janice, I bought 3/4 full of sweeties at the day. Her stuff was sold for 1 and 6pence.
And when did the shop finish then?
Oh well,
She went away in the early 30s.
Oh, well, that's a long, long while ago.
But the shop would do quite well.
Oh, yes,
yes.
yes. You see, in these days, there was no vans
No.
come round like what it is now.
And people wouldn't have
These
their own transport.
supermarkets.
No, no supermarkets, no. in
So
these
you
days.
bought everything in Port
Oh,
Logan?
yes. See, these supermarkets, the same as what's in Stranraer now, no.
So the
Yeah.
other shops, tell me about the other shops then.
Then farther along the street, Miss McGaw, and she kept everything too. It was,
Our friends, the bagage and the boat.
that's where the McQueen's is, isn't it?
That's where the McQueen's
That's
were.
McQueen's is, who's now Miss Galloway, Miss Ellen that died, left the house to she was their auntie. Did you know
I
Miss?
remember Miss Galloway, yes.
Yes, well, she was an auntie to these McQueen shops. Grace Galloway was their mother. They're very, very clever.
Well, it's Professor McQueen that's interested in,
Yes,
in this.
James and
is it
Jack, that's
Jack.
the name. Jack.
Jack.
Very clever there.
So there were 2 general shops, and
And then Mrs. Fordyce further along, it's Mercy's sweeties and
Aye.
that she kept.
Cigarettes
And cigarettes, that's right.
But they failed.
They failed.
They went down.
And the post office is, where's there now?
That's where the Dawson's is.
Dawson's, do you know
yes,
the...
next to Nana Reid.
Well, that was the post office, Miss Galloway. And she had a flock of ducks, you listen. She drove them down to the shore every morning through the back lobby.
Maybe that was me costed
No,
that.
Miss
And
Galloway.
Miss Galloway had them
Miss
too.
Galloway. Well, we'll say no.
Aye, she
They
had
say
them.
bunny boat.
And they come tottering back, they were that wise, they come back and they
Yes.
took come back through the lobby to the place, yeah.
Ah, but they
Maybe
were
she made cost, but
Oh,
they
she
were
had
in the
them.
lobby.
I met Miss Galloway too. She had that, I can remember that well.
Sheer running and then you there's a service in the hall. Mr. Shearer was preaching that drove Elizabeth Stokes right along past the hall door. And him and the cooks.
Oh, what a post office. Oh my
Oh,
God.
but she was a clever, she was
There's nobody can
and
do
only
her
thing,
business.
anybody that went in, she turned on in business. Nobody ever carried anything
quite
out of though.
right.
She was a real
She
post
really
office
was.
lady.
She was very
that.
much.
I didn't know who she muddled through.
But
She
you've
just-
no idea, Jenny, she did everything
Oh,
upside
for
down.
God's sake.
And she had all
Dad.
kinds of sweeties and cold balls and all the
Oh,
rest of it.
heavens,
But
what a place she was.
she had a rough show, but she was
Because there
very...
were a lot of children in those days to buy the
But this is
sweeties,
the thing, you see, Dr. Saween's all gone to school.
Yes.
Oh,
whereas
and
now there's hardly any children.
No.
Now you mentioned somebody being a dressmaker.
Miss, what's
Up
this?
here, you see where Nancy is? Well, that house is all changed. It's that house with the porch at it.
Yes.
Mrs.
Was Goldie called or something?
No, Mrs. Sweet was away. Can I mind that right? Aye, she was a dressmaker.
Hiddleston!
Hiddleston, that's the name. We were Plymouth brothers.
Aye.
She was a dressmaker.
And
you see,
did she make for local people?
Yes.
Oh,
And all.
And there's one of the Moreland girls that come up for did load dressmaking at the same time.
Aye. That where John Hutton is, that was a wee whitewashed house. Miss Macmillan kept house to old Mr. McClumpha, and she walked it from there to the Myrick to milk cows night and
Along with
morning.
my mother.
And the house across the street?
That's just the same, only there are new windows, and that porch never was there before.
And who
the
lived
name
in it?
was the name Cochrane, and a sad thing. One of the daughters, May, died with TB. And down below in Bridge House, another lady died with the same trouble. She lay out in a bed in the veranda. He made in the cautious.
Jessie Cosh.
And there was a blacksmith shop then.
Where the Thompsons.
Where the Thompsons is. And they kind of shod horses, not at the part of the new houses. But there's a lot of changes. But many of the rest of the streets fairly much the same, isn't it?
Can you remember when the council houses were built?
Yes.
Yes, it's 30 years.
1959.
There was fields. This was just all fields. This is all.
They're just about finished now. Started the fruit in January the 14th, 1959.
Can you tell me anything about Port Logan Hall after the lifeboat finished?
Well, the Laird gifted it to the Port.
They gifted it to Port Logan,
for a hall.
the Laird, for a hall. It had to be a lot, didn't it?
Mr. Moffat, the builder of it, more prepared it and prepared it for a hall.
But it's much the same, the hall, isn't it?
Well, it's very little different.
Very little different, still the
It's a
same.
wooden flare, but the way the flare wrote, they just put a big thing of it up and took it off in a level.
But in these days, there was an awful lot of visitors coming to the port. You see that Bridge House? She was a wonderful woman, Mrs. Cosh. She kept